A number of key resignations and defections in the past weeks in Edo State ahead of the September 19 governorship election have continued to set the stage for a robust contest between Governor Godwin Obaseki and Osagie Eze-Iyamu of the All Progressive Congress. True in his usual pre-election banter and now the resurging fiery rhetorics of actors like the former national chairman of APC, Adams Oshiomhole, there promises to be no dull moment between now and election day. Who stands to benefit more from this heightened scenario is another question. Political observers say the proven ability of Oshiomhole to energize his equally vibrant base in support of Eze-Iyamu might just be enough for the APC to nick it. But a note of caution has been sounded by others who believe that the power of incumbency currently being wielded by Obaseki might prove to be a joker at the end of the day. Early days, though, as there's still a lot of politicking to be done before the winner is announced. As we hit the final stretch, let us have a conversation around this matter with Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, member of National Institute and Executive Director of Development Spec Academy, Abuja. Dr. Ikechukwu would also be giving us his opinion on the NDDC crisis, whether or not the People's Democratic Party has been an effective opposition party, the presidency, national cohesion, and national security. Welcome to the program, sir. I'll quickly take you on Edo State.
Thank you very much.
I'll quickly take you on Edo State. And I like the way you use words to be able to give a holistic feel to what is happening. I once read one of your very interesting articles on Naira Marley, and the words you used there were really very stirring. So I want you to set a scene what is happening in Edo State, and sort of like look at the future.
Well, in part of your early opening remarks, you observed that there is no dull moment. Of course, there can be no dull moment unless it's not Edo State. That particular axis, the Edo Bendel State, is the Edo Delta axis, which is the old Bendel, is known for very robust engagements. It's known for people who speak their minds. Somebody who will look you in the face and tell you, I'll deal with you, and probably get on with it. But also people who are able to resolve their issues rather quickly and move on to the next thing. Now, the two principal actors around which much of the hullabaloo is going on are the former chairman of the APC, Oshiomhole, and the incumbent governor. The issues are fairly straightforward. It's a battle of interests. Oshiomhole came on and began to represent a new strand in Edo politics. That strand led to the emergence of Obaseki as governor. But when you plant a seed, that seed will eventually become a tree and generate its own fruits. So now there's a battle over the field by two trees, one of which begat the other. On the face of it, I don't know whether Obaseki has played his politics very well, but my evaluation is that if he had this sort of thing in mind all along, he probably should have started earlier to create a stronger base than appears apparent. In the case of Oshiomhole, I believe that he knows enough about politics, more than enough, and knows how to play rough and foul. And he's elsewhere as party chairman. The circumstances of his exit from the party should be also a lesson to his followers, namely, that it is not sufficient that you can push people aside. You may secure a stand, but retaining that stand is the critical issue. So people must ask themselves today whether a continuation of the Obaseki legacy, if there's one, of the Oshiomhole legacy and trajectory, if there's one, is in their interest, or that of Obaseki. But more importantly in all of this, my core question is, are Edo people really involved? Is this just a battle for power? So as we head towards the election, there's bound to be more permutations. Let us not forget that those who are resigning from either the APC or the PDP are not doing so because they are members of Red Cross or Father Christmas or that it's all about the common good. It's about interest, it's about economic survival, it's about political relevance, so that we don't get too excited. Idealism is not on the table. It is pragmatism and realpolitik that's going on in Edo State. And that's why I think that people should watch it with some measure of self-restraint. If you get involved and the trailer runs over you, the traffic continues. Edo, probably this will lead to really a final resolution or substantial resolution of the various strands of presumed political heavyweights in the area. I think it's good for Edo State. If this kind of thing does, they say that you sneeze in order to breathe freely. I think Edo State is about to sneeze. Whether Shomole and Obaseki together will be flushed out of the nostrils of the people in the process, or it will be one of them, we stand to see it. But on the face of it, I don't see any reason to get too excited and take sides in a terminal manner. I think we should more or less take the, if you like, spectator stand, because even when they win, it's not no delivery is going to come to people like you and I, or the bulk of the Edo people. But I think more importantly, let whoever is making interventions focus on the possibility of good governance, it doesn't matter who emerges, and a better future for the people of Edo State.
Well, Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, thank you for joining us on the morning show, for honoring our invitation again and again.
Ruben, good morning.
How are you? Anyway, I know you've been following the NDDC saga, and I would like to have your comments on what has been happening from the allegations of sexual harassment to an uncommon slap on the face of a former uncommon governor, and the drama that we have seen at the National Assembly, fainting spells. What do all of this mean? What kind of lessons can we begin to draw from this, particularly with regard to the fact that politics now seems to override the development objectives of the NDDC? And what should the president do?
Well, to begin with, I've always held the view that politics always, consistently and at all times, have continued to override the developmental objectives of the NDDC. It is the most indebted institution of state today. It gets, I think, 15% of the allocations to all the zones. What has it been doing with it? You look at the figures on expenses on COVID, you see this is a national resource, earmarked justifiably for a part of the country that produces the bulk of our national income, designed and intended to develop the area, but is being shared by the elite in the name of the people without a cost to the people and without bringing development. Yes, there has been controversy, but controversy is not new, even when it was on Padek. If you listen to, the revelations of Akpabio, who said the bulk of the contracts have been going to members of the National Assembly, is one. The fact that even the membership, the board membership of the NDDC cuts across the country is another. If you look at the overall monthly running cost of the NDDC, I use the word office, it's another matter. Then you look at all that it has done, the number of abandoned projects, the reasons for which it was set up, even the current contracts and all the rest of it being done. Look, development does not occur in a place except you develop human capital and then develop within the environment what can constitute local economy. If, for instance, you go to Kauranamoda, far out there in the desert, and you decide to invest in fish farming where there's no water, you're deceiving yourself. Let's ask ourselves, what's the Niger Delta? Is waterlogged? Aquatic-related agri-allied things are the things that will work there. But what do you get NDDC doing? Capacity building, roads are being tarred where people have no vehicle. All these avenues for carrying money off. My actual take, frankly, is that organizations like NDDC should be scrapped. Even the Minister of Niger Delta Affairs should be scrapped, because if you have a national development plan, that is what ministries execute. So should we also now have a ministry for Northeast because Boko Haram is there? A ministry for Southeast because there's there's the erosion crisis? These establishments are distracting the Nigerian state from being cohesive. What are the contracts? Who are getting the contracts? What's the impact of the people? There's no impact. And all these scandals are throwing up a lot of other things we need to pay attention to, namely the type of people we say are our leaders. The ease, presumption, and impunity with which they make declarations in public, not knowing that that is a scandal in itself. Akpabio was trying to make a point, explain who was getting the contracts. It clearly did not occur to him that that's an aberration. It did not occur to him that the matter of NDDC and the Niger Delta, after 20 years, Niger Delta should look like heaven, if you like. It's not happening. Nobody is embarrassed. Appointments are being sought. So what I see is an organization that is an alternative state government where the elite who do not get substantive positions, either through election or appointment, also struggle to play a role to carry away part of the national funds without proper accountability. Summary, Ruben, my take is quite simple. The NDDC should be scrapped. The 15% going to the NDDC should go to the state governments because the governor is elected by the people. If you say the governors are eating the money, let their people hold them accountable. But that you should constitute a body, appoint people from all over the country on the pretext that you're developing the Niger Delta and there's no accountability, there's no development, is not right. Take a simple matter. Because my youth service, I served in Edo State, in a place called Okey, Big Warri, off the mainland. That's the first time I realized there's a place in this world where if you fetch water, whether from the tap or from the river, you leave it for about 1 hour, you discover that there's something like a mirror on it. That's where the oil is produced. They had no feelings. If you wanted to go by a boat, you took a jerry can to Warri town to buy 4 liters and come back. I never knew such a thing was possible. But what's the issue on the table? Development is not about to take place all around the place. If you travel from Deje through Patani to Bayelsa, the Patani Road, every year is being repaired, and you can't blame anybody because once there's no quality control, a place you ought to dig up close to 20 meters and then pile and build the road, and they award you the contract with no quality control, you do what you like, the next year it collapses, money keeps going. Everybody forgets that the bitumen is washed into the local river as well, which is a polluted environment. Now, the summary of all of that boils down to the regional position. NDDC does not need to exist. We must come to that point. There are state governors. There are state governors, just like the PTF was set up to do what other ministries were doing. It's time we began to recompact the Nigerian state for efficiency and for effectiveness. 500 agencies of government. Does each of these, the heads of these agencies, not have a jeep? Very likely bulletproof, pilot vehicles and the rest of it. And you ask yourself, in terms of service delivery, can you honestly score NDDC 30%? Those are the things to consider. So I have no interest in the scandal at all. The scandal is only to be expected. It's always been there. It's a question of how much of it is in the public domain and how much is not. The few past leaders of the NDDC, more recently, I think shortly before Jonathan left, tried to do something. But you see, the degree of the perception of the platform as a platform for patronage, for settlement, the regular allowances to give to young people to prevent them from making trouble, they've also helped to damage the youth culture of the area. NDDC should not exist. There are duly elected state governments, there are local government chairmen. We should not leave organizations that represent a vote of no confidence on the institutions for natural national public administration and keep pretending that these things, look at this thing need not be taking place. What is Akpabio doing there? What is the Ministry of Niger? And this is not being against the people of Niger Delta. Give them their money. If you say they are change the revenue allocation formula, send the money down there. If they cannot hold their leaders accountable, over time, those leaders will be held accountable eventually. This sort of thing need not continue. Whether Akpabio was slapped, whether the allegations are counter-allegations, these are distractions. The fundamental issue should not be the quarrel. It should be whether this commission should be there in the first place if you want to develop the Niger Delta. Give them their money. Indeed. Let them deal with their governors, local government chairmen, House of Assembly members. That's my take.
Quite a diverse view from what we've been hearing in recent days on this program, where people say you need to keep this purpose vehicle or interventionist agencies for the regions to develop. But let's talk about...
it has no purpose other than to share money, as we've seen.
That don't get to the people. Let's turn our attention to executive-legislative relationship in recent times. I'm sure you're also abreast of what has been happening in that regard. And let me ask you, is this the National Assembly trying to dispel the insinuations of being a rubber stamp? Or is it a case of the center, things are falling apart and the center cannot hold any longer, as we see that these are usually members of the same ruling party? What are your thoughts on what we've seen in recent days?
No, you're talking about the center not holding, but there was never a center. The APC came into power. The president represented a bloc. The people from the Southwest represented a bloc. Rochas and his gang represented a bloc. Saraki and his whole group from PDP represented a bloc. Before the elections, after the elections till date, there has not been and there is no consensus on what is the trajectory of government. And that has shown itself in the executive-legislature relationship. How can the same government that has majority also be at war with itself within the two arms of government? That will tell you that different factions of the power elite have not arrived at a consensus. Now, coming to the question of rubber stamping, the very denial confirms it. At the risk of mischief, I think it's fairly accepted public perception, whether right or wrong, that the Senate President and the Speaker were products of a backroom agreement. They were not really elected by the House, by their colleagues, and that if you're to look at the trajectory of their performance in office, it will also seem as if there's regular, more like a reflex, genuflecting to give clearance whenever the executive wants anything. But over and above all of that, our worry should be the fact that there should even be this sort of thing. Who are the liaison officers for the president with the National Assembly? Have they not learned as a party to settle their quarrels behind closed doors? Must it always be in the public domain? So it is not surprising. Nobody is deceived by the claim that they are not rubber stamp. In any case, take away the things the executive has asked of them, what is it they've been doing? If they are committed to the people who elected them into office, with the COVID crisis, the number of jobs lost, one of the first things they will have done would be to cut their entitlements by 70%, because nobody knows what that goes into. You're creating a new aristocracy of idlers who earn income, who collect income without earning it, who live at a level far away from the reality of the people they govern, who are protected by special policemen and security forces in a fundamentally insecure environment. So we are not about to make progress. The quarrel itself does not, the face-off between the two arms of government. Is it because they are quarreling over who will do more for the people? Did we not see the interventions during COVID, where 2 cups of rice were shared in some places? Were we not told that over 300 billion had been shared out to the poor? Has that impacted anybody 2 months into that? Let us get real. The Nigerian state is encumbered by many platforms for which it has no need, including, for instance, the Ministry for Humanitarian Affairs. What is NEMA? NEMA could have been easily upgraded into a ministry, but NEMA is still there instead of being collapsed. So all of this together, but concerning National Assembly and the lawmakers and the executive, it is actually expressive, not just symptomatic, of the crisis called the APC government in Nigeria today. A government with no center of gravity, where the fight is going on inside the house, not from outsiders. Family members are chewing each other up, and it doesn't look like there's a committee of elders, uncles, or even a father or patriarch who can say, yeah, you children, sit down and listen. It's a totally disorganized house, affiliated to Bedlam, if you like, and maintaining that disgraceful trajectory with aplomb.
All right, Dr. Ikechukwu, some people will argue with you that those are the vestiges of a family that will be cohesive in the future.
Of what?
Some people argue with you that those are signs of a family that will be cohesive in the future. They will have fights, they'll have brickbats, but they'll come around at some point. But I'm not talking about, I want to talk about national security. Recently, the House came out to say, pretty much to the president, that it's time for the service chiefs. The Senate came out to say that it's time for the service chiefs, it's time for them to go, because we're not seeing anything as regards the fight for insecurity. But the presidency quickly retorted by saying that it's the prerogative of the president, and it's at the pleasure of the president for the service chiefs to stay. What's your take on this? Is it time for the service chiefs to go, or you think it's time just to tweak strategies and make them stay?
Well, the question of whether they should go or not is a national security matter that must be advised by correct information and insight into the issues on the table. The other point is that a public statement by the National Assembly, which is headed and managed by the party that is also the executive, is again indicative of political immaturity. Did they go and after consultation with the president and the elders of the party and BOT members, this is our government, did they explore all of that and finally came to the conclusion that, look, there's recalcitrance, they are not loyal to the party or to the nation at the executive level, let's go public. So making a statement in order to attract commendable headlines and probably commentary in the media is not leadership, is not effective legislation or legislative responsibility, it is playing to the gallery. Now, the service chiefs, I believe, have stayed long enough to create the impression that they ought to go in the minds of people. It is for the government, if there's any superior information it has on the matter why they shouldn't go, call the leadership of the National Assembly, put it on the table, and then it will make sense. Also, if you look through the last 5 years, national security, rather than improve, has been deteriorating. Only 2 days ago, 5 aid workers were killed, and the president, of course, as usual, sympathized with the family and told the army people to, the military and security agencies to become more active and assure the people that the government will work in collaboration to prevent kidnapping. You see, this is scandalous, that we now run a state where people who hold public responsibility are no longer embarrassed by anything. There's something called a sense of shame in our culture. And whether we know it or not, the current trajectory of the nation is also creating and mentoring a new crop of future leaders who don't see a relationship between holding office and doing anything at all, other than enjoying the privileges. So on the matter of security, yeah, I think it's time the president, if indeed the current service chiefs are indispensable and the president knows certain things for which he must not remove them, there's a way you manage state power. State power is not office. It's a different thing. You can be in office and not in power. You can appoint new ones, but have what you might call a backroom team of the core security people, probably made up of these people you consider indispensable, so they become security advisors or technical advisors on security to you, and you create a wider team. But you must know that, one, security is not improving. Two, perception is that they are staying for too long. Three, the response of the presidency has been more declarative than explanatory. No, we are not going to remove them. It's the prerogative of the president. The president, is he an angel? Did he come from heaven? Does he not make mistakes? If you have a prerogative and you don't exercise it in the interest of people, that prerogative has lost legitimacy and credibility. That's why in my place they say that when a king becomes so powerful, no. We have a talisman that has become so powerful as to even terrorize you who made it. You take it, go and show you the tree from which you carved it. You say, my friend, you're a piece of wood. This thing is getting out of hand.
And I was waiting for that.
Because when a king begins...
I said I was waiting for that because a conversation with you will be incomplete without a prover from your place. Anyway, look, with all of this...
Ruben, you must be restrained.
With all of these issues that you have addressed, do you think that the opposition parties are playing their role? I mean, when we were in government, the opposition parties were all over the place. But what's your assessment of the performance of the opposition parties, particularly the PDP? We have just
the PDP has been... the PDP, in my view, has been probably the most incompetent opposition party we've had since independence. It mistakes press releases for opposition. It does not present alternative policy proposals on the table. You have a media, and in fairness to Kola, who is their publicity man, he's doing what he can do, but you need leadership, and the leadership cannot come from how the party is currently configured. The PDP today does not understand the meaning of political opposition. Somebody should please go and show them the template deployed by AWO. How people like Sir Ahmadu Bello and the rest of them, there must be something you're arguing. For every policy Buhari comes out with, they come out to shout there's something wrong with it. Now, there may be, and there are a lot of things wrong with many things from this government. But have you given us a State of the Nation address as your position, presenting alternative policy options? What is your position, for instance, on the number of state agencies? As a party that's not in power, which ought to learn lessons in order to relaunch, are your governors exemplary? The answer is no. Even as opposition party, do you have internal democracy? The answer is no. Do you meet to plan anything by way of sustained mobilization? Are you still using the template you used from 1999 to 2014? It is still the same template of coming together just before elections, organize, call a few people, give them what you need to give them and win. It's still a distant elite. So there's no opposition. If PDP thinks what it's doing is political opposition, it needs to go back to primary school on the matter of meaningful political opposition. The other parties, whatever they are called, of course, everybody is scouting for relevance, which is fundamentally economic. So my summary submission is that there's no coherent, intelligent, structured, and sustainable political opposition. And therefore, if you look, quite frankly, there is really nothing to choose between the PDP and the APC. So PDP pretending that is warming up to take over, Nigerians must ask themselves, what is it PDP will now bring? It's been out of power for 5 years. The PDP states, how are they faring? The party, has it become cohesive? Is it now structured? Does it suggest discipline? Are the members of the PDP not also going at night to meet with APC for privileges? So there is no political opposition. Is a what you might call an inchoate elite that is so committed to eating that there is consensus on national plunder and corruption. That's why there's consensus on NDDC across all the benefits.
Thank you very much, Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, for joining us this morning on The Morning Show.